Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with Ken. I'm Ken Biberai, a managing director at Savills, a leading tenant advisory commercial real estate firm. We are in week 40 of social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and 5 weeks until the presidential inauguration. In the news today, Congress is coming close to a $900 billion stimulus package, and the vice president received the COVID vaccine this morning. Today's topic is spurring innovation in education, healthcare, and philanthropy. And we are very excited to be joined by the president of American University, Sylvia Burwell. Good to see you, Madam President.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
Well, I got to tell everyone, full disclosure, I am a proud American University alum, once an Eagle, always an Eagle. So I'm very biased in today's conversation. So listen, you jumped in at American University in June of 2017, right after leaving the administration. Obviously working really hard to come up with plans and a vision for the university, and then the pandemic, hits. What has the last 40 weeks been like for you personally as a relatively new president, and also for the campus community at large?
So I'll start with AU, and it has been a challenging time in higher ed. I think everyone knows that. We've seen the numbers. I think over 500,000 folks have lost their job in education in terms of the industry and a sector that has been hard hit. But at American, we're very fortunate, have come together as a community. The strategy that we had in place is actually in certain ways accelerated. We had hired our chief online officer, and the day he started was the day we announced that we would be going online. At American, we put 2,000 courses online in 10 days, but we already had 500 online. So we are working through. We've been fortunate in terms of being able to try and work very hard to take care of parts of our community as we work through and try and maintain our momentum. The university is continuing forward, even though we are mostly online with very few of our students present, but continuing to move forward. This year, we entered the most innovative universities list at 35, and we are number 25 in terms of undergraduate education.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, let's see real quick. Well, you mentioned acceleration briefly. What have you seen in terms of things that you may have been planning for that accelerated during the pandemic, right? I mean, it's one of these themes that we constantly hear about in every one of these conversations, obviously like the digital aspect of it. But what else is kind of, sped up in your mind as maybe trends that were 5 or 10 years away?
So the online learning is an important part that has accelerated a lot for us. And so that's something we have accelerated in terms of our learning in that space. In addition, another thing that has accelerated for us is actually being nimble as a university. And we've shown that we can act and move and change quickly. And the other thing that we have seen acceleration, another part of our strategy, was our engagement with DC. And our DC engagement is something that was a priority for us. And we are engaging even more with the district. We're actually trying to think about ways that we can help the schools get open in terms of using some of our testing background. And the last area is inclusive excellence. During this year and this period of time, this has been a strategic priority for the university. As we know, the issues of race, racial equity, structural racism have come to the fore, and that's accelerating the work in that space.
Beautiful. So take us back to the spring and summer. Right. As someone who's a pretty diligent, methodical planner, how have you kind of tried to adapt, through the summer, trying to plan, through the fall, trying to plan, and now what does the spring look like for the AU community?
So as we have done
through your decision making, how do you even kind of do this?
Started with setting 3 principles that would guide our decision making throughout this, and this happened back in March. Number 1, the health and safety of our community. Number 2, how in this current context do we achieve against our core mission of learning and scholarship? And number 3, the question of our role in the broader community. Because we are the 5th largest employer other than the government in Washington, D.C., it is a place where we need to think about our actions in the broader community in the region, including everything from our employees to how we impact health in the region. Those were the 3 guiding principles that have guided us through our decision-making as we go. As we've done this decision-making, what we've tried to do is include and have as much input as we can from our community to hear and understand what they are thinking, what they are seeing. We have created lots of working groups that have been the structures by which we get that input. We've done many, many webinars and time with our parents our students, our faculty, so that we're getting that input and making decisions. The other key thing that we've tried to do is focus on when you know something, communicate it. And we have a real cadence of communication. Every other week, I do a communication to the entire community.
Yeah, that's incredible. So communication is key. And what's the spring going to look like? How many students are coming in person? How are you rolling that out? How are you, doing both online as well as in person, and thinking about that for the spring?
So as we think about the spring, thinking about it in terms of our classroom work, our curricular work, and then thinking about the residential and non-curricular work. As we come into the spring, we'll be increasing the number of students. We have about 40 students on our campus now. That'll go to about 250 when we first have students come back. We're doubling the number of courses that will have a face-to-face component. As we start this semester, it's still a very small number. But the other thing we're doing, and we plan this based on the trajectory of the pandemic, when we get to an April timeframe, we're going to be doing a 6 to 8 week residential experience for a much larger group of students.
Right.
So during that period of time, we're going to invite students to come back. In January, they'll be signing up if they want to, and we'll probably have 1,500 students on campus doing more things that we can do outside. The vaccine will start to be, hopefully, more people will be vaccinated, and it will be a period where I am very hopeful that if people follow the basic health measures, that we get to a place where we do not have the kind of case counts across the country that we do, and we will have a firm testing approach in place for when those students come back.
So take us a step back. What brought you to academia, right? You spent over a decade at the Gates Foundation, obviously serving as Secretary of Health and Human Services, as well as multiple other levels of government, from OMB to Treasury. When you took a step back in, January of 2017, what kind of pulled you to AU, right? You're not exactly the kind of more traditional university president, which is especially exciting for me as an alum, and I think it's just such a perfect fit. But, talk about these other experiences you've had and why you think this is maybe the right platform for you now to.
So as I was coming out of government, one of the things that excited me about higher ed, and this gets to the acceleration of change, Ken, that we talked about earlier, is I believe it's a really exciting time in higher education, that the kind of changes that we've seen in everything from the newspaper industry to what we're seeing in terms of retail was going to occur in higher education. And it has to do with everything from the way students learn, in terms of, they learn together, they, sit in groups to learn together. They don't do their homework in the stacks. They don't even, they think that's pancakes when I bring up words like that, in terms of how they study, what they need to do and how they need to learn. In terms of most of the students that we have right now are going to have many different jobs. And so how you think about how you prepare and think about that learning. And the other thing that I think is very real is that the economics of higher ed is changing and needs to change. We cannot be in a space where our cost of attendance is so much greater than core inflation over an extended period of time. And I think about education in higher ed like I think about healthcare. We need better access, affordability, and quality. Those are the three things that I was working on when I worked on healthcare. They're the things I work on education. And why American University is because I spent time and got to know American as part of that process. And it is a place that is thinking about the future, thinking about change. And at its core, American University, the strategy was called Change Makers for a Changing World. And that's the kind of place I want to be.
So great. And to give us a quick update about what's been happening on campus, obviously right behind you, the amazing new project. I remember sitting with you when you first came, and I came back from New York City in 2017. And that was something you were talking about back then as a priority, getting a science center and diversifying some of the offerings on campus. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what's the future hold? I mean, so many folks, I think, associate AU with just government and politics and so on. But I truly believe there's just so much more, and just well-positioned, having a campus and being in DC at the same time, especially with everything happening in the world.
So I'll highlight just a couple of the things that are part of our strategy. One thing is right behind me. This is our new Hall of Science, which is a building that affords us the opportunity to bring together our scientists all in one place so they can do that integrated and matrix work, partnership. The idea of partnership, I believe, starts in the university, making sure that biologists work with chemists, that each of our schools work with each other. The law school and the business school are working together, our School of International Service, our School of Public Affairs, that they are all working together, because that's how our students think. And that's how problems get solved in today's world. This Hall of Science is a part of that. in terms of bringing those scientists together and having world-class facilities that work can be done. We already have seen an uptick in our number of science majors coming in this first year. And this building is LEED Gold, which suits with our campus. Many of you may know we were the first university in the United States to be carbon neutral. And we want to continue on that path. And so that's one of the examples of some of the work that we're doing. Another one, Ken, is you mentioned in terms of engagement with DC. As part of our strategy, Changemakers for a Changing World, the District of Columbia and the region are a priority. And a priority in that we are not just in DC, we are of DC. And that we are thinking about the ways that we can contribute. One of the things I'll highlight from a sort of academic perspective is we created a program called the DC Public School Teacher Pipeline Program. Wow. And the objective of that program is to have students from schools in the district come to American University, get their degree in education, and go back into the schools. And what we're doing now, we've raised some scholarship money, so we have some of our first students to do that, but we are aimed to raise more. So what we want to do is impact the DC schools so that what we see are students that look like the district because they come from the district in terms of that they have the quality undergraduate learning that American University has to offer in education, and that they go back in that district and serve. The other work that we're doing in that space is we do work that is involved in anti-racist work so that those that are teaching in these communities can think about how they involve and engage that work in their day-to-day teaching. And
this week, I think you honored some amazing AU alum that are on the front lines. And I think one of those alum, maybe the mayor of DC, right? So this is a very lifetime and practical connection that I think you're building.
So we do annual Alumni Awards every year of our great and outstanding alums. But this year, what we chose to do was specifically focus on alums who have contributed to what is happening in this past year, and whether that's on a health front, an economics front, or in the work that's being done on race. And one of the most special honorees we were able to honor this week is our own mayor, Muriel Bowser, who is also an AU alum.
Amazing. Such great news. Well, you obviously come at this from such a unique experience. You left, Health and Human Services, and right now that's obviously the focal point for so much of the federal response. Talk to us a little bit about when you left government, what was in place? What did you learn from the Ebola crisis and Zika, and what kind of preparedness would you have recommended? Would you have liked to have seen? I mean, talk about this federal response and how it may have been different if it happened while you were there, and how you would have kind of tackled this or approached it.
So a lot of things were put in place. We put together a national strategy, an international approach. It was called the Global Health Security Agenda, where we, the United States, were working with countries around the world to make sure that they were prepared and that we all were prepared for the next pandemic or global health crisis that we were about to face. And I think it is very telling that one of our key partners in this work was South Korea. And the difference in what has happened in the two countries, I think, is important and informative. And as I think about there are a couple things that are most important. What is the federal government's role in a pandemic like this? It's two fundamental things: providing the tools and providing the communication. Pandemics evolve. You don't always have the information. The communication is extremely important because there's uncertainty and changes in knowledge as you go along. It's also extremely important because what's different from a pandemic than some of the, say, financial crises or even military crises that we face as a nation is everyone has a role. So from the President of the United States to each one of us as citizens, we all have a role in contributing to fighting the virus. And so those are things that are extremely important. It also is why a national strategy and a national approach to things is extremely important, so that you have that consistency of everyone knowing what is it we're supposed to do, how are we supposed to do it. It is science-based, and we're all going to do it that way. That's why from the beginning, the importance of a national approach to testing, the importance of a national approach to contact tracing. And the other thing is the clear recognition that one of the things that's most unique about COVID-19 is that it passes asymptomatically. And so you have to, in any of these crises, you have to recognize what you're dealing with and how it is different so that you put in place. And that is why surveillance testing is so important in this space.
Got it. So you talk a lot about communication and planning. So much of that is tied together by trust. And I feel like right now there's just such a trust divide, and whether it's in media or in government, or questioning the need and importance of masks. Today, the vice president took the vaccine. Talk to us about what you see as maybe the challenges that may be coming down the pike because of trust issues. What do you hope to have Americans do over the next coming weeks? I know HHS put out a video with Dr. Fauci yesterday where he's talking about the benefits of vaccines. Are you worried about people not taking the kind of trust concerns and issues?
So one of the things with pandemics, the number of things and the complexity, we obviously need to make sure that people are taking the vaccine, and that is extremely important. And we need to do it and make sure that people trust in the vaccine. And so I think it is important that it is seen that the vice president is taking the vaccine, that Dr. Fauci is appearing and talking about that. I think we have to use the channels that people relate to, and whether that's their social media, their different communities that they have, whether those are religious communities or sports communities or whatever it is, that we need to use all of those channels on the vaccine. But what I think we cannot lose as we're getting that vaccine out, which is so important, is right now in front of us, we have tools. It's going to take time for all of us to get the vaccine, but we have incredibly important and effective, scientifically proven tools, and we need to be using those. And those tools are the masks, the distancing, the outside versus inside. All of those things are very, very real. And yesterday, again, record numbers of Americans dying.
Yeah.
And for the families that go through this, your loved one you don't see, they don't see you, they die alone. This is a tragedy right now in our nation. And while we're focused on the vaccine and doing the right things to get that out quickly, at the same time, we have to do the other piece, because it will be many months before we get to the place where we have what is called herd immunity, and the percentage of people that are vaccinated can protect about our whole community.
So as I mentioned, we're less than 5 weeks away until a new administration comes into office. What recommendations have you either provided or would you recommend to the president-elect moving forward in responding to COVID? What kind of sharp and meaningful changes or steps should they be taking on day one to address
So I
this?
think many of the things I just discussed are those kinds of things. And I think we see a number of those things already coming to the fore with regard to the question of the recognition of science and how we have voices that are not political voices speak, and whether that was the role that President-elect Biden has selected Tony Fauci for, in terms of having a scientist be in that space and talking about that, the role of a person like Vivek Murthy, who is the Surgeon General, and in terms of scientific voices that will be speaking to that. I think we've seen that there has been clear articulation that there will be a national strategy and a national approach. I think that the president-elect has also talked about the importance of using some of these tools and talked about them in ways that are not about blame or anything else, but just straight out, we need to do this as Americans. It is the patriotic thing to do in terms of how we take care of our communities and how we care for each other. That this isn't about people doing rights or wrongs. It is about how we take care of each other as a community and take care of ourselves, both from a health and economic perspective.
We have a little Q&A function up top, and we had a question come in from Tom Block, a fellow AU alum. He was asking about the ACA. And what do you think is the status of the ACA right now, moving forward? We're going to have a divided government potentially. Where should actions be taken in your eye to enhance, improve, and empower the Affordable Care Act?
So I think the Affordable Care Act is a part of the fabric of the nation now. And that's important, because I think all of us accept that if you have pre-existing conditions, that you should be able to get coverage. All of us accept, there are many people I'm sure listening today that have their children who are under 26 on their insurance, that we accept that there aren't annual limits or lifetime limits, so that if you are getting your cancer treatments for a year, that there's not a block in terms of you get to this time in the year and you can't get your last chemotherapy treatment. That those are things that are accepted. And I think what we now need to do is really focus on these issues of affordability, access, and quality, and how we take as a nation the next steps to move those forward. And a shift in the conversation from just words and, but to the real substance of what it is we're trying to do. How do we increase that affordability for our healthcare? And at this incredible time and moment, making sure that the people who need access to healthcare have access to healthcare, as we see what's happening and the number of hospitalizations that we have across the country, and what we're going to have as follow-up to this. Another important part of this that I think we haven't recognized as we think about moving forward with the Affordable Care Act, one of the things it did was make sure that mental health treatment and behavioral health treatment is a priority. I think, every one of us across this country has had some challenging days in terms of that. And so I think that's going to be a real issue that we need to. I know we see it with our students as they struggle to not have the social engagement that they normally do. This is a developmental thing. This is like a part of where they are in their lives and what they're supposed to be doing. And so I think we need to think about that. But moving forward, focusing on the access, how do we increase the access? And that is often related to affordability. There are some specific things that you can do, but the most important thing actually is it is in front of the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court will make a very important decision, a decision that could be devastating in terms of a lawsuit that was brought by a number of attorney generals that they will be reviewing. And that's step one, is making sure that the basics are safe so that we can then build in the other areas.
Interesting. So going back real quick to your experience and time in philanthropy, right? I always find these things interesting. You mentioned looking at AU, the business school, coordinating with SPA and the law school and all this. When you take a step back and look at the broader kind of recovery from COVID, economically, educationally, through all these different aspects of our society, how do you view the role of philanthropy, academia, private sector, government? I mean, you've had a lot of experience in all of these areas. How do they work together? Who does what? Who's the incubator testing things? Who are the people implementing things? How do you view all of these different sectors kind of collaborating and working together? And where do you think, what sector needs to be doing more or needs to evolve quicker?
I think that first, it's about the prioritization of how we focus on, the order of these things in terms of the most immediate things that we all need to be focusing on. At the same time, we're focusing on the long-term issues, and whether those are the issues of the health recovery, the economic recovery. And I do believe that COVID has laid bare, in addition to other things this summer, the real divides that we have in this country in terms of health disparities that are racially based and socioeconomically based. And so I think getting those prioritized and then thinking about the roles of each of the different types of institutions and places. We know that governments and markets are what scale solutions. We know that philanthropy is an extremely important part of trying new and different things and supporting different efforts that are ongoing as they continue to build. We've seen the great work, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I was, has done tremendous work in terms of helping and supporting, whether it's the organizations that are doing vaccines or treatments for COVID. They were doing work on the flu, which is how we found some of the initial cases in Seattle. That kind of work is going on at universities. We need to be doing the research and scholarship and understanding everything from some of these healthcare disparities and how they're happening and why they're happening, to making sure we are translating our research. At American University, it is a place that focuses deeply on the scholarship and learning, but also moving the information for change.
So as you think about innovation, you mentioned AU now being on these lists as innovators and so on, and exciting news here in the region with Amazon coming and putting a big footprint. Obviously, Microsoft is expanding in Google. George Mason is building an exciting innovation campus in Arlington, and Virginia Tech is expanding in Alexandria. How do you view AU into fitting into the innovation ecosystem, which seems to be blossoming here? And how do you view the private sector as a potential ally, and how do you build relationships in the private sector to kind of further enhance AU's position in these growing, in this really diversifying of the regional economy, which for so long had really been just government focused?
So thinking about these issues, as I mentioned, partnership is one of the key priorities of our strategy. And as I said, it begins in terms of department to department, but builds all the way in terms of the kinds of relationships that we have with the private sector. And American University was one of the first players to join with the Greater Washington Partnership, which is a group of businesses in the region that have also joined with a group of universities in the region to have the real conversation in specific details when businesses say, here's what we need, and say, universities, you need to meet that. We've had the specific conversation. We work together to create a digital credential, one that is general and one that is specialized. And at American, we're doing the generalized credential and we're offering that to our students. And so it's a set of courses that the private sector believes that they need in terms of getting the skills that they need. If our students do this, it will be shown on their transcript that they have this credential. And it also means that these companies will agree that these students will be in line for interviews. Doesn't guarantee, but does guarantee that once that credential has been successfully achieved, that they will do that. So we've joined with a number of the companies. We were one of the first universities to do that. A number of other universities have as well now. And a number we're doing the specialized credential, but we're excited about that because we believe that's what's great for the region. That's what's great for our students. And we also believe it's actually great for some of our scholarship and learning. We're actually participating in a case study of the work that we have all done together already.
Great. So before I let you go, we have a lot of alum listening, people in the DC area. What do you need? What can people be doing? Obviously, I think folks are getting pulled in all kinds of directions for, philanthropic causes they care about, local causes they care about. But when you look at AU and where you're trying to take it, what do you need from alum? What kind of engagement? How is that request for engagement even evolving through all of this as well?
So first thing I would say is thank you to all of our alum who have engaged and have been a part of this crisis, because it is the fact that we have been a community that has put us through this crisis. And a study done by the Stern School at NYU said that American University is in the Thrive category in this crisis. And that is a thank you to our alum. In terms of our alum, what we want and what we hope are, one, your continued engagement and engagement with our students in terms of mentoring. And that is mentoring and help as they are thinking about that connection to the world that they're going to have afterwards. It's while they're getting through, and then it's as they're coming out in terms of internships on the way, but also their jobs and that sort of thing. It is coming to campus, sharing your knowledge and experiences. And of course, it is in philanthropy. We are, like all institutions, right now we have a great strategy that we're pursuing, and the philanthropic efforts, which will be helping our students be able to achieve the scholarship and research. We just recently received a great gift for our Center for Athletic Performance that is focused on student wellness and having spaces for our students to both gather, do physical activity and other activities, as well as our student athletes who are an exciting group of people on our campus. So the philanthropy is an important part of it as well.
American.edu. President Burwell, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you to everyone tuning in. I want to let you know we're having one more coffee talk before the holiday season with Tracy Vickers, the Executive Director of It's On Us, an amazing organization. And in the meantime, we want to encourage you to practice social distancing, wash your hands, wear a mask, and now get a vaccine. Have a great one. President Burwell, thanks so much, and see you on campus soon.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
Great to see you. Bye.